Maybe in the last minute of your life, you want to be something more than a goddamn savage!
Annunziare mentatio. Ego sum homo indomitus.
Fearless rats, insanity. He watches the game fantasy. Radio 1, forbidden sight. He searches under of the shadows and
You like this? Oh, you like being food for the immortal?
Hello, my savage friends. You are listening to the voice of Immortal COIL, your oracle of whiskey mysticism. Revolution is my name. It is Saturday, the 13th of January, 2024, 11:12 p.m. West Coast Seattle time, the second show of the new year, and it is time, my friends, to get motherfucking savage. I'd like to let you know that this broadcast will contain strong language, subject matter, images, and content intended for a mature 18 years or older audience. Viewer discretion is advised. This video contains copywritten content. However, under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17 of the United States Code, this content is presented for the purposes of education and entertainment through the use of parody, satire, critique, analysis, and/or social commentary by means of subjective opinion. Which means, buckle up, Dorothy, Kansas is going away. I'd like to welcome everybody in. Of course, we have our week. Thanks for showing up, buddy. Live or in the replay, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. I am currently sitting at 561 subs and a little bit over 1,600 watch hours, which means I'm about halfway to the watch hours that I need to become monetized. I've been at this YouTube thing since 2018, so it's long deserved. So if you guys can help me out by sharing this out, giving a thumbs up, giving it a like, all that kind of stuff, it will only go to help. Typically I have my co-host Stephen Walton, but he just let me know that he is feeling like absolutely terrible, so he's not able to join us this evening. So, you know, we just want to send him some good vibes and some healing energy, and hopefully he'll end up feeling better and we can get him in here next week. It's been a wild couple weeks. I do this thing where most of the content that I post on YouTube is either going to be these live streams, the Savage Show, or YouTube Shorts, which I upload at least once or twice a week. And my style of short is that I tend to do some sort of like a Zen kind of thought. I try to keep it concise, keep it down to a few sentences. And I released something last week about the power of word, which I got a really sideways comment in the comment section. We had this guy come in and basically question what I had to say. And I said something to the effect of, I spoke to how silence is golden. I said that words have the creative potential to create new domains of knowledge. And only when you grasp that do you understand the power behind the meaning of silence is golden. And I had this guy come on and just go like, what the hell are you even talking about? And basically what that means is that because words are so powerful and can shape reality, it's best to shut the fuck up until you actually have something cognizant to say. And that's good advice, you know. Too many people talk and blither and jack their jaw and wag their tongue without any sort of like pre-planned speech. They just talk to hear themselves talk, and then they wait their turn to talk when somebody else is talking. They're not listening, they're just thinking of the next thing that they want to say, uh, which is a waste of words. It's a waste of talent, if you will. But I'm used to people who are commenting on my YouTube shorts just being like random TikTok kids who don't have two brain cells to rub together, let alone try to digest a high philosophical sort of Zen cone, as it were. But that's okay. Usually when people give me pushback on my shorts, it ends up giving me the opportunity to clarify what I mean. I just maybe I'm getting too grumpy or savage in my old age. I just don't have a lot of time or patience to deal with fuckheads, as it were, because, like I said, words are creative. You know, uh, which is also why, like, I don't go out of my way to talk about like when shit's going really bad. I don't mind talking about it after the situation has resolved itself, but in the midst of turmoil, I find that speaking too much about things tends to solidify it more than it should be. There's three realms of creation. There's thought, there's word, which we're talking about now, and then there's deed. Deed is the most dense. It's obviously you walking and physically doing something. Words describe or put into motion or help solidify an idea, which is represented by thought. And I used to get really pissed off at my significant others when I'd have them because women can sometimes tend to be a little bit more negative when dealing with situations. I tend to be more or less an optimist, even when shit's really, really bad. I know that if I thought my way into something, there's a way to think yourself out of it. And usually the way that works is that it's not necessarily denial because you're accepting of the situation, but what you're not doing is granting the situation undue power. And I can't tell you how many women I've been with who would sit around and play the what if game. Well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? Well, what if this and that happens? Well, what if this and that and the other thing happens and then we're fucked? And I'm like, why are you sitting around giving that shit power? Why are you describing the manner in which you fail? My dad, he was in the military and he's from Texas, and he had this old saying. He says, "You don't plan to fail, you just fail to plan." And sitting around describing what if scenarios sounds like you're planning to fail, to my estimation, you know. And I get you should be aware of all contingencies. Okay, you should be prepared for whatever, but you should not give undue power to uh, happenings that have not occurred. It's kind of like you're burning your own candle before, like in the middle of the wax. You're not even lighting it from the top. You're burning the wax in the middle and then trying to light it from that side. You're defeating yourself, and that is truly fucked. That's not how a master negotiates reality, you know? So what do I mean? I mean that the past few months have been insanely difficult, and I have persevered through it and have come out the other side. Um, I didn't talk about it much just for the reasons that I delineated just now. I'm not going to give power to doubt, but now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm happy to share it with you guys. Okay. So, starting back in November, I accepted a job with an aerospace company. Okay, so I'm a metal form fabricator, and we create components for military and commercial aircraft. Okay, I'm not going to say which ones because I don't want to get the company, you know, caught in the middle of the savage thing. But it's a really good job. It's a career. It's not just flipping burgers. It's something that I can work at and retire. Unless somehow I end up blowing up and becoming a millionaire. Uh, but the job that I was working at versus the place that I was living at were about 100 miles apart. And being that the job runs from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., uh, and the geographic distance between where I was living and where the job took place, I actually had to ride public transit overnight and arrive very early in the morning, approximately 3.5 to 4 hours before the plant even opened. And I had to hang around outside, like in the fucking cold. And typically, what I would choose to do is actually find a dry spot and try to take a nap. Um, so half my day was spent working. Another one, I'd say 1/4 of it would probably be uh, and then I got up and rode the bus again, and then one in the middle of the fucking night while I was waiting for the fucking plant to open. And I'll tell you what, like the colder it gets, the harder it is to do something like that. But in the true spirit of strapping on your balls and pulling up your pants and, manning up, that's exactly what I did. And that whole time, I'm going to work and I'm not complaining. Hardly anybody knew what I was doing. They just took for granted that I would show up and do my job. But the type of people that always pissed me off were the kinds that come in and they lock on to somebody and they go up and just started like bitching about anything, whatever the fuck was bothering them. Their dog, their cat, their husband, their wife, their brother, their sister, their kids, or even some fuckhead who cut them off in the middle of traffic. And they'd go up to somebody and tell the story and get some sort of reaction and then go find somebody else and tell the same exact story the same exact way and get a different reaction. And then, you know, they'd walk up to me and say the same exact story the same exact way. But I'm one of those guys that I want to try to like solve the problem. And I'm like, okay, so that sucks, but like think about it like this, or like maybe take this approach. And they'd be like, oh yeah, I didn't think about it that way. Thanks, you really helped. I'm like, hey, not a problem. Happy to help. And then they'd go to the next person and tell the story again. So it's just like the wind is weaving its way from between one ear to the other. Nothing's in between. It's like a fucking wind tunnel. It's crazy shit, man. Uh, but there's a tenet in life that I guess males, especially in society these days, are expected to suffer and suck it up. Um, and I guess that depends on your definition of suffering. I definitely wasn't comfortable. I'll tell you that. especially as it got colder. There were a couple times where it got into the 20s, and I'm an expert at like layering, so I know how to uh, keep myself warm. But layers work better when you're moving around. If you're trying to like sleep or something, sleeping on the cold ground fucking sucks. Even if you have like cardboard or something underneath you. But the weirdest thing was being mistaken for a homeless guy. So many stories to tell about being mistaken as a homeless guy. Okay. The first one the first one's really fucked up. Okay, so the place that I found to sleep that was dry, there's a bus station, and then adjacent to the bus station is some train tracks, and then the train tracks go underneath an overpass bridge, right? It is the train tracks, and on the other side, it passes directly underneath the interstate. Uh, Overpass was dry, so it was more or less safe to sleep under. Uh, so I'd take a little nap. I'd pull my arms inside my jacket to conserve body heat. And, I could use like one side of my sleeveless jacket to create some sort of rudimentary pillow to rest my head on. And usually it was only like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, so there wasn't a lot of traffic and people weren't really gonna come up and bother me. But for some reason on this one night, this car is like driving past and it slows down. And especially like in a setting like that, I'm a fairly light sleeper. If I hear footsteps or if I hear a car or something, I'll pop open my eyes and, look around and move so that people aren't thinking that I'm like dead or need medical attention or something. But this car slows down and then the window rolls down and this guy calls out from inside. Now he's like a Middle Eastern guy. He has like you know, short black hair. He has dark skin and a fucking beard and a slight accent. He doesn't sound like fucking guy from The Simpsons. Apu. He doesn't sound like that, but just a slight accent. He rolls his R's or a, a slight little bit, but not quite that bad. Uh, and he calls out to me. He goes, "Hey, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just taking a little nap." And he goes, "Are you hungry?" And I actually had like I had stopped at the dollar store to buy lunch or something, so I had like a plastic like bag next to me, and I point at it and I go, "No, I got food right here. I'm all right, man." And I'm trying to just like kind of not like in not so many words tell him to fuck off. Like, I'm okay, leave me alone kind of shit. And he goes, "Oh, okay. Hey, are you homeless?" And I'm like, "No, my job doesn't open until 6. So since I got here early, I just thought I'd take a little nap, and I'm desperately seeking the end of this conversation." And he finally goes, "Oh, are you gay?" And I was like, "No, no, I'm not gay." And he goes, "Oh," and he just rolls up his window and he drives along. So my takeaway from that little exchange is that he thought I was homeless and that he was going to offer me food if I sucked his dick. Oh man. So yeah, that's one of the possibilities of what happens to you if people mistake you for a hobo. We got Keely Chow coming in, probably right at the good time. What's up, Keely? I was just telling some stories about being mistaken for a hobo. Yeah, Check, check. There it goes. All right. Thanks for the heads up, R. Sorry about that. My technology isn't like completely up to date. Uh, okay, so essentially, I'm in the same spot, different day, taking a nap, waiting for the job to open up, and this lady in a wheelchair who's probably in her late 40s, maybe 50, is being pushed around by a pair of black guys. The black guys are probably late 20s, 30 or so, maybe. Um, but they're not like South Central gangster ass black guys. They're bus station black guys. So if you've ever ridden the bus or taken the train, you know the kind of guys that hang around, right? So she stops and she asks if I'm okay. It's kind of the same kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, I'm just taking a nap. I'm, waiting for my job to open up. And she goes, oh, okay. Well, I'm going to meet somebody and we're going to have a fire. Would you like to come and stand next to the fire with us? And I was like, fuck yeah, I would. Because it was like in the 20s, I want to say, or like low 30s. It was cold. And I'm sleeping on the ground, so it's cold. My bones are cold. Fire sounds good. And she's like ordering these black guys around. She's like, okay, take my chair, point me this way, hold this, put this on the ground, And I'm just kind of like mesmerized. I'm like, how come these guys are just like, listening to her and just doing whatever the fuck she says? And I start like trying to make sense of it in my head, but then she goes, hey, do you smoke? And I was like, no, I don't smoke. And she goes, oh. She goes, do you smoke anything else? And she's talking about drugs. And I was like, no, I'm sober. And she goes, oh, good for you. And she goes, do you happen to have a lighter? And I said, yeah, I do have a lighter. I do carry around a lighter because you never know when fire can come in handy. So I hand her a lighter and she goes, cool, thanks. Do you mind if I use your cell phone for a sec? And she's in a wheelchair, so I don't think she's gonna steal my phone and run off. So I let her use the phone. She calls and checks her balance on her fucking Panera card. And then she goes, does this phone have a flashlight? And I said, yeah. So I turn on the flashlight and she's fishing around for stuff and she pulls some stuff out. And then she starts to pull a blanket over her head, which means she's gonna smoke. She's gonna smoke uh probably probably fentanyl. And I was like, hey, I'm not here to tell you what to do or what not to do, but you can't have my phone underneath there while you do that because I can't show up to work with it smelling like whatever the fuck you're about to smoke. So she's like, okay, and she hands me my phone back and she's sitting there getting high like right in front of me. And I'm just like, shit. And she's like lighting up her tinfoil and she has this like fucking tube that she's sucking the smoke up out of. And then she takes a couple hits and pulls the blanket back and like the black dudes are sitting there like going like, okay, hey, can I have a hit? And she's like, no. So then I started like I understood suddenly why these black guys are wheeling her around and doing whatever the fuck she says because they want to hit her drugs. And I'm just like, fuck. So she finishes smoking and I'm just like, pardon me, I don't mean to be late or nosy, but why is it that you happen to find yourself in a wheelchair? And she goes, oh, because I had like a cancer and it destroyed like the muscles in my hips and my groin. And I said, okay. And I said, again, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but do you think it's wise to use drugs while you have cancer? And she goes, probably not, but I'm probably fucking stupid. And I go, oh. okay. And like enough time has passed, and I'm just like, so what's up with your friend and the fucking fire? I thought we were supposed to be getting like warm and toasty. And she's like, I don't know, let's would you mind wheeling me over to the actual bus station and I can check on that? And I was like thinking to myself, I'm just like, yeah, I guess, So the black guys stay there and I wheel her over to the bus station, which is probably like 100 yards away. And she talks to somebody else and they're trying to figure out where this person is. And essentially, the person's not going to show. So I wheel her back to the underpass and I'm like, look, I'd rather, I think it's cool that there might be a fire at some point, but I don't think I can sit around and wait for it. So I'm just going to take off. Because at that point, I didn't want to hang out with those people anymore. You know, you got a lady who's smoking fentanyl. You got two black dudes who want to smoke fentanyl, and then you have this lady on a power trip who likes to order people around, and I'm not down with that. So I walk up to the street, to the main street, to the main drag, and I found a bus shelter and just slept there until it was time to go to work. But I mean, you can't. It's like a probability thing. If you're hanging out outside, eventually, like fucking weirdos are gonna come around. I think the skill of it is not to fall in with those fuckers. Um, but it's also about perseverance. I knew that it was gonna get worse before it got better, and that's almost the worst of it. The big worst of it was my lease at the old place was up in December, and I was always planning on moving closer to where I worked. Uh, and in order to do so, I was gonna rent a room closer to was there, but I had to wait until I got paid. And legit homeless. It was in the week thinking like, shit, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do the Savage show because I might be homeless. But thankfully that didn't happen. My buddy heard that I was in a tight spot, and he's like, "Hey, you can hang out here until you get paid, and you can get your room." So that's where I'm at now. I'm at my buddy's house in one of his spare bedrooms, doing the Savage show without fucking Stephen Walton because he doesn't feel good. uh, so that's about as much catch up as is going on. Um, but essentially, the moral of the story, right? The if Aesop were here, he'd tell it to you. Is to always have your focus on the end goal of what you are attempting to achieve, and the details might get fucking difficult at times. But if you can persevere through all that and keep your vision as focused and pure as possible, there's no way that you cannot walk into that reality eventually. It's just a question of showing the universe how badly you want it and what you're willing to do to get there. And I was willing to do anything uh, short of compromising my back hole, and and I've persevered. So from this point on, uh, things have been developing rapidly. I got in touch with the guy about the room. I'm gonna go see about it on Monday. So more than likely by this time next week, by next broadcast, I'll be set up in my new spot. And hopefully Walton will feel better by then. Yeah, or saying Walton down. The black cock down, right? Yeah, we got to send him like a healthy tree or something, like a little bonsai get well Mr. Miyagi thing. Yeah. Uh, and it's not going to be a super long show today. I think that it's important to keep a regular schedule about these things. I actually intended for Walton to conduct like a little interview today because last week we were discussing some of the let's say non-human encounters that I've had, and he was very taken aback by some of that, and not like in a horrified way, but like in a surprised way. Because I mean, I love Steven, but he likes to talk, and when he gets focused on himself, like he can sometimes forget that other people have had like experiences too, you know. And some of the stuff that I had to say last week, I hadn't really had the opportunity to discuss. So he was genuinely surprised, and I sent him a text. I was like, "Hey, why don't you come up with like 12 to 15 interview questions, and then we can go off that and just vibe off the chat and you know see what kind of fucking show happens." But there's been like some sort of like fucking bug going around, I guess. I got like a sinus infection myself. I've and I'm not like down and fucking like sweating and having a temperature and shit, but like I I got snot going on. It's not fucking fun. I've actually been motivated to take like NyQuil and shit, which I hate taking medicine. I hate taking medicine almost as much as I hate going to the doctor. Maybe that's a guy flaw. I don't know. Uh, but aside from that, the other thing that I finally got to do was see my kid for the first time since before Thanksgiving. Of course, I did the dad joke, "Well, I haven't seen you since last year." But she's 10. She's a cool little kid. She was asking about metaphysical things. She was asking about how to see auras. She was asking about some of the ET encounters that I've had, and she's really interested in dream walking too, like talking about dreams. Um, so it was cool to reconnect with her. And as she gets older and has more intense experiences, because I actually asked her too. I was like, "So do you think I'm weird for talking to you about this stuff?" And she goes, "No, I really like it." Um, I know that I'm going to be able to help her through some of this stuff, that I can be like a guiding hand and, you know, speak to her about things that other people just are ignorant of or deny the veracity of. Um, we were scrolling through, I was showing her some of my Instagram feed from like when she was a baby. I've been on Instagram since shit 2011, 2012, something like that. Long time. So it's like what, 12 years. Uh all the way back to when she was a baby. And then as we're scrolling, it started off we were looking at baby pictures, but then she started looking at some of the stuff I'm posting in between. And I posted something about Nikola Tesla. And she knows who Nikola Tesla is. She used his name. I just called him Tesla, but she said Nikola Tesla. And the quote that I put was about how science will make more progress studying non-physical phenomena than they have in the past 2 centuries. And she was like, "Well, what does he mean by that?" And I was saying that we live in a sea of ambient electrons, and Tesla had figured out a way to harness that. But then I also had the opportunity to explain a little bit about how political power is structured on this, about how everything is based on oil, uh, compared to what a means of electrons and wirelessly transmitting them. I was explaining to my daughter how Tesla was the father of the radio, of AC current, and the wireless transmission of energy. And all of those are things that we readily use now that he understood fucking 150 years ago. Hail Tesla. Love that guy. The other gentleman I spoke to her about was a gentleman named John Searle. Now, John Searle is famous for, in the 60s, using radio control to basically fly what other people were mistaken for UFOs. But what John Searle did is he used rare earths such as neodymium to create a superconductive electrical generator that is held in place magnetically. None of the moving parts touch each other because they are being held apart by like a millimeter thick magnetic field. So as the thing runs faster, thermodynamics don't apply because they're not actually touching. The thing, as it runs faster, it actually gets colder. And when it goes superconductive, it becomes anti-gravitational. Right. Yeah, RR. Hell Tesla. Got the whiskey shot there. It's good stuff. And I showed her a short video about the Searle effect generator. I'm gonna put that in the chat. I can spell generator. Also known as the SEG. This is something that I'd encourage you guys to there it is. Oh, we got CJH joining us. What's up, buddy? How you doing? The Searle effect generator. This is something that I'd encourage you guys to type into YouTube and go look for it. John Searle's an old Englishman. He's probably in his 90s by now. He's probably gonna die pretty soon. But the Searle effect generator, it looks like it's a series of rollers. And there's a dark inner core, there's a white middle core, and then there's like a copper outer ring. Okay, and it's all proportionally squared to each other. There's a large roller in the middle, and then there's a series of 8 rollers in the second ring outwards, and there's like 2 to 3 rings full of rollers. So that's how I'll know that you're on the right video. But essentially, John Searle figured out a way to, again, in a different way Tesla did, but these rollers, because of the materials that they're made out of, they attract ambient electrons from everywhere. Electrons that aren't hooked onto any atoms. So they're funneled into the center, and then they're collected and focused, and then outside of the Searle effect generator is a just a regular induction equipment piece that captures the power output, and then you can power your home or power what the fuck ever, which is what John Searle was doing in the 1960s. Not only was he using the superconductive property to create vehicles that could fly, right? He was using the non-superconductive phase to power his home. And when the British government and the powers that be figured out that he was basically running a free energy device, they used that as an excuse to say that he was stealing power from the grid, and they came and threw him in jail and confiscated all of his material. So John Searle went to jail, and he was basically like his reputation was tarnished. By the time he got out of jail, all he could do was talk about it because he had no working models. So he'd go around and he'd talk to like electrical engineers, and he'd talk to people in universities. He'd talk to physicists. He'd go and talk to them about what he had been building. And it took some convincing because John Searle's one of those guys. When he was born, he was deaf. He couldn't hear anything. He taught himself how to read lips, and then he taught himself how to speak. I don't understand how he was able to do that, but do it he did. And meanwhile, as he's going around giving speeches and convincing physicists that he knew what he was talking about, the price of rare earths, specifically neodymium, went through the roof because they started finding other applications for it. See, when he started building these things like in the 50s and 60s, rare earths weren't that practical, but they began to become practical, especially in the fields of electronics. Like, for instance, if you're listening to this on a cell phone or through a laptop or something, there are incorporated into the design rare earths, specifically neodymium. And the biggest supply of the world for neodymium is in China. So, yeah, if you need neodymium, you got to kiss China's ass, essentially. My daughter was just like, so he invented something that could power the world for free and they put him in jail for it? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, well, why? With all the innocence of a 10-year-old. She's like, why would they do that? And I said, well, you need to understand that the world is based off of oil. And if you invent something that makes oil obsolete, it's going to upset all of those people who for 100+ years have made oil their livelihood. So if they don't throw you in jail, they're going to come and steal your invention. Or if they don't steal your invention, they're going to threaten you. Or if they don't threaten you, they might end you. And this is like one of the first times she realized like the stakes of what is going on this planet. The other thing that we talked about that I thought that was interesting that I would share with you guys is we talked about the Roswell incident, because one of the images that I had on my Instagram page was the infamous weather balloon photo with Jesse Marcel from the Roswell record, right, in 1945. So I'm pretty sure everybody who listens to the show knows what the Roswell incident is. But in case you don't, I'll explain it to you the way that I explained it to her. I said, in 1945, the United States did an atomic test called Trinity with Oppenheimer, right? They set off the world's first modern, and I have to stress modern, nuclear explosion in the deserts of Los Alamos, New Mexico. And then shortly thereafter, we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, one on Hiroshima and one in Nagasaki, which marks the first modern usage of atomic weapons. Now, if you know your ancient history, you know that there are several instances in ancient texts where uh, descriptions of divine weapons match the characteristics of atomic weaponry. So the bombs go off, and then this starts to attract the attention of extraterrestrials. Roswell, New Mexico was home of the 507th Bomber Group, which was the world at that time was the world's only nuclear squadron, consisting of like B-52s and uh, atomic bombs. So the story goes the night of the crash, and this is in July of 1947. The UFOs are kind of bouncing around, checking things out. There's an electrical storm, and then according to Colonel Corso in his book, The Day After Roswell, the saucers themselves, between the electrical storm and radar, found the wreckage and notified the Army Air Corps, which what they were at the time, who came and retrieved the crash debris. Now, what Colonel Corso says in his book and what I've read elsewhere is that in addition to material debris, there were also bodies, and there was also at least one live being. And that's what I told my daughter. I was like, yeah, so there was a crash and there were bodies and there was at least one live being. And like her eyes got really big and she goes, "Oh my God." And I said, "Yeah." So she said, those poor people," which is very I guess it was sweet. I found it moving that she felt like she wasn't like creeped out by aliens. She was thinking like those poor people. They just came over here to do a job and then like they die. And then she said I bet the other one that lived was scared because you know, humans were gonna come and like take it and it's like stuck on this planet kind of thing. And I was like, well, they don't have the same kind of feelings like we do. I'm sure it felt fear, but I don't think it was quite the same sort of anxiety that a human being would feel. And I know this from experience with them, but like I also I didn't want it to be too weird for her. I wanted for her to be able to conceptualize of this without it turning into like a Art Bell thing or like a, you know, spooky thing. I don't think that there's necessarily anything spooky about beings from other worlds. And I told her to think about it like a scientist. If you were a scientist and you were studying a less developed life form who suddenly had developed an incredible technology, then it would make sense why you would maybe risk yourself visiting it to study it. And she seemed to grasp that. Um, but then she started asking me about some of my own encounters, and I went into it a little bit. Um, I didn't get too like super detailed, and I didn't talk about like the breeding program or anything like that. Um, I was just basically telling her about one of the first times that I met up with a being, and I had a picture that I illustrated that I put on my Instagram. Um, Sorry about that, technical difficulties. Uh, but yeah, I had an image of a being that I had interacted with that I drew. Like I drew it myself. I physically recreated it and put it on my Instagram, and I was showing it to her. And she was just asking a bunch of questions about it. Now, I'd love to go into detail about some of that stuff, but again, the original intent before I went on tonight, I was going to have Walton interview me, and hopefully some of that stuff would have came up. So just in the instance that we're able to do that in the future, I'm going to just kind of hold back on that for right now. But it definitely was an interesting time. Um, and I also have no doubt that as she grows older, and especially after her like hormones kick in and her system like wakes up, she's probably going to be able to start to perceive some of these things herself too. Um, I started talking to her about how to see auras, and one of the easiest ways to start to see them is to dim the lights, and if you have like a dark background, you can start to see the first layer, which is between a millimeter and half a centimeter off of your skin. The closest layer is going to appear like bluish grayish. And a lot of people can see it, but they actually like convince themselves that they're not really looking at anything. Um, the best way to do it is actually to kind of stare at your hand, like hold it maybe, I don't know, a foot away in the dim light up to a dark background, and look for the field in that space. It's the most dense of the layers of the aura, and so far it's the easiest to see. And if you don't see it right away, just keep looking because it will develop kind of like a photograph. Um, I actually met her at a library, and the lights were bright, and the carpet was like this puke kind of rainbow color. So there's no way to really look for an aura there. I'd like to teach her one day, though. Um, I had a pretty good workbook that I worked out of. It was written by a lady called Barbara Ann Brennan, and it was called Hands of Light. And it takes you through some very basic exercises. It's written out like a college textbook, so it has like a chapter, and then it has like end of chapter questions and review questions and exercises and things like that. So you could very easily turn it into a course if you I'm sure you'd have to get permission from the fucking publisher or whatever. Um, but that book is actually available um, online for free, and I might even have a link for it. Do I'm gonna throw it in the fucking chat, and you guys can go and check it out. Let's see. Let me see. I know I sent it to Walton. I know I did. There it is. Okay. Found it. So this is going straight in the chat. Paste. This is a copy to a free edition, like an online PDF version of that book that I read. I initially came across this book. It was owned by my mother, but she couldn't make use of it. So I think she just kind of kept it around. But I got into it and I used it to teach myself how to see auras. So check it out. This is free online. You don't have to pay anything. You just fucking download it and off you go. But it'll open your third eye. It'll open up a lot of different uh, levels of existence for you. So uh, that's about it for where I'm caught up for this week. Next week's basically going to be spent securing a new room, and then getting moved into there. So hopefully by next week, our co-host will feel better, and I should be more diligent and probably prepare some backup topics just in case Steven can't join us in the future. But I think we did pretty good. We went for about an hour tonight. I want to thank my chat for stopping by. Of course, we have the Mighty RR. We had Keely Chow come out, and we had CJH Entertainment come out for a little bit. Remember, whether you're listening to this live or listening to this live or in the replay, hit the thumbs up, share this out, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. And then once again, for watch hours, I'm about halfway there. I have about 1,600. I need 3,000 total by the end of the year in order to attain monetization. So, if you're using your computer and you're just fucking around, open up an empty tab and throw on a Savage fucking broadcast and just mute it or something. If you don't feel like listening to it, just let it run. You know, help me hit the monetization goal. I need about 1,400 more hours, and then I'm good to go. So thanks for joining us tonight. Lift high, whatever it is you are imbibing. Join us in the established salute. Here is to us what is like us, not a goddamn thing. And we will talk to you next week. Hail, my savage friends.